In this video, we're going to explore the comparison between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. And I thought we'd start with this image. The purple staining cell that you can see here is a cheek cell. So if you're looking here, you can see all the way around the edges. This is the cell membrane of a cheek cell here, viewed under the light microscope. And you can see the nucleus in the middle. So that is a eukaryotic cell, a true nucleus cell. But what you can see on the surface are little rod-shaped bacteria. There's two actually stuck together there. And these are prokaryotic cells, much smaller, no nucleus. And bacteria are the common cell that is a prokaryotic cell. And you can see instantly, as a comparison, size. So size is really important difference, as well as the absence of a nucleus in prokaryotic cells or bacteria. So let's have a look at the next set of comparisons. So we've got animal cell and plant cell here. You know all about these. They've got lots of internal organelles which are bound by membranes. So you can see things like mitochondria in both the animal and the plant cell there. We have a nucleus for both of them, a true nucleus surrounding the DNA, which is in chromosomes, which are linear. You've got a nuclear membrane, more membranous structures like the Golgi apparatus, rough endoplasmic reticulum. These are all surrounded by membranes, and they compartmentalize the cell. They set aside little regions in the cell which are highly specialized for the jobs that they are doing in that cell. Bacteria or prokaryotic cells do not do that. So let's have a look at a bacterial cell. It's really small there. We can make it a little bit bigger. So a bacterial cell, because it's so small, does not have a need for compartmentalization. Its rate of diffusion, its rate of activity is sufficient to meet its needs because it is so small. There still is in there DNA floating around in the cytoplasm. It's a circular piece of DNA. It does not is not bound by a membrane. There's no nuclear membrane, and there's no mitochondria, no chloroplast. That would just take up the whole cell, if not bigger than the whole cell. So we need to have a think about how we might do those functions of respiration and photosynthesis. We'll have a look in the next video. But it's interesting to note that bacteria don't just look like that. So in this image, you can see there are lots of different shapes of bacteria. Bacteria can be spherical, and that's what we call cocci. So if you've heard of words like streptococcus, that means it's a circular shaped bacteria. We have rod-shaped bacteria, which are bacilli, like Bacillus subtilis. And we have all sorts of different spirals, little half spirals, full twists, and lots of twists. So different shaped bacteria, they're not boring. And in fact, one of my favorite bacteria is cyanobacteria. So cyanobacteria is a bacteria that is responsible for algal blooms on lakes and things. And you can see here it's little circles, but every now and then there's one specialized circle that does a different job. So cyanobacteria have green pigment in them. They can capture sunlight energy. In fact, cyanobacteria were the very first organisms on Earth to capture sunlight energy and make oxygen. And they are responsible for oxygenating our atmosphere many, many years ago. So that's cyanobacteria. So in general, filling in your notes, you want to say what are the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotic cells are smaller. They are less complex and less organized. They do not have membrane-bound organelles. They do not have a nucleus. Their circular DNA floats freely in the cytoplasm. Whereas eukaryotic cells, like our animal and plant cell here, they are much larger, more complex, more organized, have organelles surrounded by membranes, and have a nucleus which is filled with linear DNA inside a membrane. So let's have a look at the evolution of these cells. And all cells came from an ancestral organism, which was very primitive, and the very earliest cells that came from that were prokaryotic cells, were non-nuclear, very tiny cells. And there are actually two groups of prokaryotes: bacteria, which are still around today, and archaea. And the archaea are the ancient bacteria. And there are still some examples around today, and there are also fossil evidence of archaea. And at some point in evolutionary history, we have the development of the nucleus. So then everything else coming down this line, nucleus, is a nucleated cell. So all the other kingdoms are eukaryotic cells: protists, fungi, plants, and animals. So let's have another closer look at the bacteria. I said I was going to explain how they're able to do respiration and photosynthesis, and what would happen in a cell if there's a bacteria that was particularly active is its inner membrane would actually fold inwards like this, just to create a little bit of extra membrane surface for reactions to happen. So you can see how it's kind of added extra membranes on. And if it was a cyanobacteria, its inner membrane would not only be folded, but it would also have embedded in it the proteins needed for photosynthesis. And when we compare this to all the other nucleated cells, they are much bigger, and each one of these examples of kingdoms have a nucleus. So we have fungi, we have protists. Now, protists can be single-celled like bacteria, and some bacteria are stick together in little colonies, and protists can do that too. So protists and bacteria share many habitats, but the protist cells are much bigger, and they are nucleated. And then plants and animals you already know lots about, but they've got their nucleus and all of their other membrane-bound organelles.